quite a large number of participants, nearly 300 who registered for the event, but not everybody can attend. So we're going to record the event so that it's available for those who are interested in hearing afterwards. My name is Alva Mccarthy. I am head of the JE Cairnes School of Business and Economics here at Nui Galway and Professor of Public Sector Management. And I'm going to moderate and chair the event today with our three panelists. So I just remind everybody on our call, if you can please ensure that your microphone is on mute, if that's okay. Thank you very much. So just to give a little brief overview and to welcome you to the JE Cairnes School of Business and Economics. We are a School of Business and Economics that has been in existence for over 100 years in terms of delivering business and commerce education. We're very proud of some of the key international accolades and achievements that we've got. Most recently, in March, we announced our double ACSB accreditation, which is a globally recognized accreditation for leading business schools in the world. And we have a number of other accolades at program level or at school level, as you see in the slide there.
Alma, you've gone on mute.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Did you hear? When did I stop?
Just from the start of that slide.
Oh, sorry. I don't know how that happened. Okay. So what we're focused on today is our flagship program that we offer in the school, which is the Masters of Business Administration MBA program. MBAs are very much geared for people who are maybe in their sort of middle management levels and lower senior leadership levels, and it's focused on developing business strategy and leadership skills, especially for those who mightn't maybe have come from a business background necessarily. Our MBA here at Nui Galway, our mission is around developing globally talented leaders of vision with regional edge. And on the left of the diagram there, you can see very much focused on developing leadership skills, very much focused on global talent and ensuring that when our MBA students complete the program, that they're able to contribute at a very high level in terms of their organizations and for society, and leading from and building from our regional edge here on the west coast of Ireland. So some of the key features, if you like, of our MBA, and this brings us into the purpose of our discussion here, which is around especially the leadership dimensions. We aim to provide a curriculum of immediate value that integrates an excellent learning experience in a vibrant executive development environment. And if we look down here, we're looking at ensuring that we have values that are consistent with business and society and adding value at an organizational and wider level. And the program is very much aimed to challenge participants to implement innovations in their careers and for their organizations and more broadly, and also very much around a focus on transformational leadership and getting people ready for taking advancements in their careers. So without further ado, I would like us to sort of maybe segue in, if you like, to the purpose of our event today, which is looking at how women in particular have benefited and are benefiting from the likes of an MBA in their career and in their career journeys. So I'm very delighted and to welcome everyone to the event, our lunchtime event, and I'm so pleased and honoured to be joined by our three speakers who are with us today. Our first panellist is Dr. Geraldine McGinty, who is a graduate of Nui Galway, did her degree in medicine here, and is Chief Strategy and Contracting Officer with Weill Cornell Medicine in New York City. Geraldine has very kindly set up the McGinty MBA Scholarship, and Odharna, Dhomhnalláin, who's on our call as well, is a recipient of that scholarship, and she's on the first year of our MBA program here at Nui Galway, so we're delighted to have Odharna with us also. Odharna is an acute medical unit registrar at GUH, and as I say, is a current MBA student with us, just finished up exams and continuous assessment, so I'm sure Odharna is delighted to have that behind her at this stage. Our third panellist is Emma Corcoran, and Emma has just been promoted, literally, in the last few days to Global Extrusion Lead with TE connectivity. And Emma was a recipient of the MBA 30% Club Scholarship, which we brought in here a number of years ago, working with the VP for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion and others across the university. And the MBA 30% Club Scholarship is very important in terms of adding diversity and bringing in a really high level of female leaders onto the program. So Emma was a recipient of that scholarship, and she'll speak to that later on. So we're very pleased to have that connection with the National 30% Club. And I know that Geraldine has worked closely with Mary O'Connor and continues to do so in that context also. So what have all these three great panelists got in common? Well, as I said at the start, they are all either grads of MBA programs. Geraldine did her MBA in the States, and she'll speak to that in a while, and Lorna is a current MBA student. They are all very much enjoying very successful careers, and as I did my preparation, I was blown over by the achievements of our panelists, and it's just fantastic to see female leaders making such strides in their field. And of course they're all working and making very valuable contributions in the healthcare sector, and they are all in UI grads, so this makes us even prouder to have them all on today as panelists. So our format today is to try and have as much sort of a more relaxed conversation and get insights from Geraldine, Odharna and Emma about their leadership journey to date, how the MBA in particular might have helped that, and what maybe advice they have for other colleagues on the call. So I might start with Geraldine and hand over to you just to maybe reflect a little bit on why you decided, Geraldine, to set up the McGinty MBA scholarship and why here at NUI Galway.
Thank you so much, Alma, for the opportunity to be here today. And I think that for me, my MBA was a real game changer. It gave me a language, it gave me a way of making decisions that was very different from what I'd learned in medical school, and really was something I absolutely needed at the time. I had a significant operational role, and it was just the toolkit that I needed. I think that, I work in a culture and an organization which is the beneficiary of enormous philanthropy. So certainly inspired by seeing what that could do, albeit at a very different level in the US typically. So I thought it was important to think about how I could give back. I really debated about putting my name on it. That seemed maybe a little bit tall poppy syndrome, but so many of the naming opportunities in my own institution here in the States are men. So I think that if I look back in history and I look at pioneering women in science, Florence and Edith Stoney, two of probably the first medical physicists and probably the first consultant radiologists in the UK who were women, Irish women. One of the things they did was they always tried to help other women. They set up scholarships. They helped, they mentored other women. So that was inspiring to me. And of course, Galway, because it's my alma mater.
Yeah, well, thank you, Geraldine. And I think it's so true to reflect on where we've come from. And I think it's incumbent on all of us not to forget the great contributions that women have made through so many fields ahead of us, and that maybe some of us sort of can enjoy now in our own careers, but have been hard won and hard fought by those who've gone before us. And it's incumbent on us to make sure that we continue and improve that in our own journeys. So maybe handing over to Odharna, and as a current, you're in the middle of doing your MBA now. Why did you choose to study an MBA program?
Hi, everyone. When people ask me this, I tell them it's an opportunity that very much I happened across. A consultant that I previously worked with said, there's this incredible opportunity. How many years postgraduate are you? And I said, oh, this is year 4. So he sent me on to details. And of course, he was talking about McGinty Scholarship for female physicians to complete an MBA at NUI Galway. And initially I was confused because I was working as a doctor. I intended to continue working as a doctor. And I was like, why would he be suggesting to me that I go and study what I thought was a business degree? But then I started to look into it. I looked at Geraldine's own reflections on the MBA and what it had conferred to her. And I started looking at the MBA differently, that while it included these fundamentals of business, accounting, marketing, economics, the priority was more about leadership and innovation. So once I realized that, it became this opportunity that I really couldn't resist. Because in medicine, we're essentially taught how to problem solve in this linear fashion. You know, a patient presents with specific signs and symptoms. You arrange some investigations, you assess the results of these, and you generate a solution that you apply and you assess the results. So while this is a very appropriate manner of dealing with patient care problems, it can't be as usefully applied to other issues that you might encounter in terms of resource management and leadership in the healthcare setting.
Okay, very good. And maybe Emma, just to hand over to you, you know, stepping back, just why did you do the MBA?
Yeah, for me, I suppose my background was very much engineering. I would say I was strong on the technical side, and having built those foundations, I had developed my own leadership skills internally within various organizations, but I really wanted to learn that holistic view of running that business, essentially. I suppose I didn't know what I didn't know. I knew I had gaps in leadership and I had gaps in strategy. So they were the main drivers, really. And predominantly, I suppose, the whole kind of strand or pillar of leadership around the NUIG MBA was definitely very attractive to bridge that gap as well.
Okay, thanks, Emma. So that's very useful to sort of set up the scene, I suppose, why you did, the two of you have looked at doing the MBA here. And maybe Geraldine, just to step back to yourself, maybe if you could give the audience today maybe a 2-minute thumbnail sketch of your own career. And you know, I know you did your MBA there in the States. So maybe just a very introductory backdrop to where you've come from and where you're at now.
Sure. Well, I graduated from NUIG in 1988, so a long time ago. I'm a radiologist, and I would say it's a specialty that's at the interface of technology and humanity. So coming to the US, where there was a lot more of a technology infrastructure for radiology, was you know, a good choice for me. As I say, I took on an operational role for one of the large academic health systems here in New York, developing a network of outpatient imaging centers, and the MBA was really a great toolkit for that. I was a partner in my own business for a number of years, but I joined the faculty at Weill Cornell, coinciding with a national leadership role in my professional society. And what I do here is a combination. I do still practice 1 day a week, but we're about 1,600 physicians. So there's a big strategy function about how we grow in our very competitive environment, where we grow. And then I also lead our negotiations team. We have probably multiple versions of VHI that we have to negotiate individual payment agreements with. So I lead the team that does that. And I'm also actually fortunate, I teach in our MBA program. So it's another thing I get to do.
Okay, very good, very good. And maybe Emma, what's a quick thumbnail sketch on where you've come from?
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned, started out in engineering. So I suppose my undergrad was in industrial chemistry. And then I did a master's in chemical engineering. I've been a strategic leader in medical devices for over 16 years. Worked for Boston Scientific, Merit Medical, and now I'm with TE. So I suppose, as I mentioned, I very much have kind of done the foundational technical skills, the leadership, and most recently then into global multi-site roles.
Okay, great, thanks Emma. And Orna, hand over to you.
So as I said earlier, I'm currently year 4 postgraduate. I graduated from Trinity College Dublin in 2017 with a degree in medicine and an MSc in translational oncology. I completed my intern year in University Hospital Limerick as part of the academic track programme, which allowed us to do a research post in addition to our traditional clinical posts. I then completed my basic specialist training in medicine in Galway University Hospital, and I currently work in the acute medical unit as a medical registrar, which has been a very interesting and challenging role throughout the global pandemic, as our role as a department has really had to adapt to meet the needs of the hospital.
Okay, very good. So I suppose one of the big challenges that people have when they're thinking about taking on the likes of an MBA program is people tend to be in quite demanding roles. And I remember myself when I was MBA program director, you know, people were tended to apply who were at a particularly demanding time maybe of their careers, and perhaps also had a lot of things going on in terms of their own personal lives and family commitments. So maybe back to yourself there, Geraldine, in terms of when you were making the decision to do your MBA, you know, what kind of challenges did you face in making the decision? And maybe if you talk to us a little bit about how you manage that work-life family balance, because the MBA is a part-time program, you're still working and so on and so forth. So maybe what kind of challenges did you face in making the decision, number one, and then the whole work, study, life, family balance piece was number two?
I don't think there were a huge amount of challenges other than sort of stepping into a completely different educational system. You know, there's a sort of an entrance exam that you have to do, which was not something I had any familiarity with. So, you know, once I'd gotten over those hurdles, in terms of the balance aspect of it, you know, I think the great thing about business school, as opposed to my primary degree, was that there was a recognition that you're balancing all of these things, and it was an incredibly supportive educational environment. You know, the other thing was that there was a recognition that what you did every day in your day job was a critical part of the educational experience. So that you know, the two felt very tied together. I'm not going to lie, it was a pretty intense, at least first term. You know, just juggling all of the schoolwork, and you know, it's something I spent a lot of time advising our students on. But it was a very sort of purpose-driven effort for me. So you know, I managed through it, and there were some long nights and some, you know, some tough days, but it always felt worth it, and always felt connected to what I was doing in my day job.
Okay, and maybe Emma, you reflect back on those two questions, you know, the challenges.
If I'm very honest, I probably made the decision very selfishly, so I probably didn't stop and think initially. I'm going to thank Martin for being the person during my interview who actually asked me that question. I had probably thought about work, but I hadn't really thought about the whole work-life balance, you know. For me, definitely, to follow on what Geraldine said, you are adding value the minute you step in the door. Day one, you just learn how to structure yourself so much more. I would say to people, there's probably three things to consider. Absolutely, that work-life balance, which is but you have to sit down and have that conversation, something I didn't do at the start and I was forced into it. But have that conversation, because there is a lot of give and take. The second thing for me was I was very worried that I was in a new role. It was very demanding, you know, could be long hours. Was that going to suffer whilst doing the MBA? And at the end of the day, TE were sponsoring me on the MBA, so I didn't really want to let my performance suffer there. And the third thing is probably the most important. It's really understand the big picture. Why are you doing it? And I think both Orna and Geraldine will agree with me. It's a question you will come back to time and time again. I will say though that, you know, we would go to, for example, Connacht Rugby games, to the Six Nations. We never missed any of those. I will probably say that the more under pressure you are, the more things you can fly through. But, you know, I will echo what Geraldine has said. It is difficult. At the start, definitely the first semester is, but I will absolutely say it's made me much more efficient in work, looking at chaotic situations and just being able to prioritize them very, very quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. What springs to mind is work expands to fill the time available sometimes, and you know, sometimes when we're forced to do things with less time, we can actually be perhaps better. And Orna, you're in the middle of all this now, so it's very fresh for you as you just come out of year one, and indeed the 12 months that lie ahead for you into second year. So the same kind of question. Is there anything you'd like to that you found in your own context in terms of how you're doing it right now, managing all of those elements in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I would be echoing what Geraldine and Emma have had to say about it. The biggest challenge for me was assessing whether this would actually be feasible, like if it was physically doable. You know, it's a particularly challenging time in healthcare between the global pandemic and more recently the cyber attack. So assessing whether I would physically have the time to attend the lectures, to get assignments completed. But, you know, I got through it. And then in terms of balance, you know, I always feel obliged to lie in these situations and say, oh, it's very feasible, very doable. But really, I've had to just commit to these extremes of work and extremes of study. And I have had to compartmentalize very strictly. So when I'm at work, I just have to commit 100% to being at work. And then when I'm in lectures or in group meetings or completing assignments, I just have to commit solely to that. and that is the only way I've survived year one.
Yeah, very good, very good. And as I was reflecting back on the event today, I was program director, so we're joined here. I'm pleased to see Martin Hughes is the current MBA program director at Nui Galway. I was program director for 6 years myself, previously here at Nui Galway also. And I was reflecting back on what I had seen in women's journey and our female students when I was very close to it as program director. And there are three things that struck me about the impact of the MBA on our female students during the 6 years when I was very, very close to see their journeys from when they would have come for the interview at the outset and graduated. And the first thing that struck me was the impact of the female network and peer-to-peer mentoring. I think that was very, very strong and very, very powerful for women. And I'm going to unpick each of these a little bit with the panelists, but that was the first thing. The second thing was the impact of role modeling of other external senior females, very important. So we would have brought in a lot of external speakers in our program. We continue to do that. And the impact, I think, for the female students of seeing other senior female women in demanding leadership roles and being successful really helped. And, you know, we hear that adage that if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I think that was very important, was the role modeling as the second point. The third point for me that I would have observed was around the confidence building piece. So the MBA really pushing women beyond maybe what they thought were their own capabilities and pushing them to perform at a higher level and beyond their comfort zone. And I think that was great. And you would see a huge difference from when someone came to the interview at the start and when they graduated. And I still love to follow LinkedIn and see the progression of our female graduates, especially when I would have known them in terms of being program director. So I'd like to maybe see if you would agree with those particular three things that I observed: the importance of the female network and mentoring, the role modeling, and the confidence building. And I might go back to you, Geraldine, if there's any of those that resonate with you in particular from your experience on the MBA, and even more generally now for women in senior leadership roles.
Sure, all of the above. So, you know, there's data out, everyone needs a professional network, but there's data that women need sort of a two concentric rings. You need your larger professional network, and then you need a really tight squad of people that you can really go to for support. And I think that you definitely get that through your class, through the relationships you develop. The confidence piece, you know, this whole imposter syndrome thing. What I like to say is, there is no document that you can put in front of me, no spreadsheet you can wave under my nose. It's going to make me feel intimidated. Definitely had some imposter syndrome around the academic promotion process. That's a whole other story, but I have that confidence. There are no big words that are business words that are going to scare me. And as a physician in leadership, I think we are sometimes sort of intimidated by that interface with business. And then I think the other thing, you know, is just knowing that we know that women aren't necessarily as willing to put themselves forward. If they have sort of 80% of the job requirements, they might say, not for me. Our male colleagues, fair play to them, are a lot more confident about that. So I think that confidence building is incredibly important, and feeling like you have the right tools.
Yeah, great. And maybe I'll hand over to Emma. Is there anything there in as I say, that you think has resonated for you in terms of thinking about that journey?
Yeah, I have gotten the feedback from other people in terms of, like, you know, I've seen you take on the MBA, I've seen you do this, I believe I can do it, or I can go back to college. So probably not something I would have been aware of till people gave me the feedback. In terms of the confidence, absolutely, hands down. You know, where before I probably would have shied away from something, now I'm not afraid to try it. I'm not going to say I'm going to be the expert, but I think I have a very big toolkit, so let's give it a go. So that definitely. And in terms of the network, I suppose when I did my engineering degree, you might be lucky if you found 10 women among 600 men. The year I did the MBA, it was split very much. I think we had one additional male. The guys will correct me now later, but I think we'd one additional male, and it never felt like there was this male-female. And if anything, probably learned much more about diversity and how important that is and how critical it is. as part of the conversations. And the last part on that I would say is, if anything, I think in terms of family commitments, I definitely didn't have as many as other women doing the MBA. And seeing them, for even me, was just fantastic to see. And they role modeled that as well, to show that actually you can balance everything. You don't need to make this decision between career, family life. It is all doable.
Yeah, absolutely. And even sort of being able to have a coffee with someone and say how you're feeling and what you're struggling with, and to hear that that's perhaps more the norm than being unique can help as well. And Odharna, how are you finding maybe that the networking and the role modeling and that confidence piece in your own journey as you go through the MBA right now?
Yeah, well, I would consider to be, really an immense privilege throughout this program is seeing the other women in my course, but also as part of the McGinty Scholarship. Geraldine has been a true role model, and she has truly embodied this idea of active championship rather than just token mentorship in this journey of female leadership. And additionally, she has established a full board of very impressive, very inspirational advisors who have all been a near constant source of support and encouragement throughout this journey, because really this idea of networking is less well established in medicine, but absolutely really benefiting from that board of advisors, from Geraldine's support herself. It's been a true privilege.
That's great to hear. And I know Emma has been a recipient of the 30% club, and that has been really important, I think, in driving the agenda here at a national level, and it's great to have had that ambition. Emma, how have you found that mentoring within the 30% club, because that's another scholarship avenue we have here on the MBA program?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I mean, definitely it's opened up a door of network. There has always been that support there. I probably spent some time last night even, reflecting on it, like what impact did receiving the scholarship have? And when I thought about it, it probably comes back to the confidence. I had signed up to the MBA, I applied for it, a little bit of imposter syndrome, would I really be able for it? And then I kind of felt, well, somebody's, prepared to back me on it. And I suppose that was huge. It definitely made me make that first step. But also when I really reflected on it last night, there was this little bit of a sense of, okay, I'm not just doing it for me now, I'm actually doing it for other people, to show them that. And I did think at the start, 30% club, will people get stuck on the statistics of it? What does it really mean in terms of leadership, but I actually don't. I think people can appreciate that it is difficult as a female. And I think it has definitely changed much more to the diversity aspect of it. But it was fantastic. And again, like Odharna said, a very, very strong network.
Well, it's great to hear, and it's one of the key benefits, really. So I suppose if we were to kind of, again, just reflect, and especially for our attendees joining our event today, what's the top piece of advice you would give to someone who might be considering signing up to do an MBA in September? What piece of advice would you give them right now to help them in their decision making from your own experiences? I might go back to you, Geraldine.
Gosh, just do it. I mean, I think that if you're thinking about it, it means that you're looking for professional growth. It's not the only way to grow professionally, and certainly in medicine there are many other things. If you take, say, a research path, but it is. It's been something that, as I say, has been a game changer for me, and never regretted it. So just do it.
Just do it. And you said there a couple of times, game changer. What would you say is different about your leadership style now, Geraldine, versus before the MBA?
Yeah, again, I think my medical training was very different than the training that Odharna would have gotten. But very hierarchical, this notion of the physician leader as this lone hero. I'm the one who has all the information. I know I'm going to make the decisions. And sorry, we're in New York. You can hear
I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's New York in action there. So Geraldine is joining us from New York for our invitees. So go on, Geraldine.
but you know, it's this real, it's this notion of a team-based approach to leadership, and the idea. I love there's an article from Deborah Ancona at MIT that in praise of the incomplete leader. I don't know everything, as you said, Emma. I'm not the expert on everything, but I will consciously put together a team of people who can get the job done, and I'll consciously do that to look for diversity. That's not something I learned in medical school. I'm sure that there's more of that in medical school than there was when I was there, but I still think physicians are trained very differently.
Right, yeah. And maybe Odharna, just to move on from that, I mean, you know, as a more recent graduate, you know, is there more focus on that leadership dimension, or, you know, is the MBA definitely plugging a gap that might still be there for you?
Definitely an element of both. So certainly there is more of a team-based approach and less of this paternalism that dominated in the past in medicine. But certainly I do think that that traditional aspect of problem solving is still very much dominant within our training, you know, very linear. And the MBA really has taught me to think differently about things. Like, I think I approach problems differently, but also through the introspection and through learning about how I deal with others and how others deal with me, it has certainly made me more sympathetic towards others in my interactions with them. And that has been hugely beneficial.
Okay, great. And maybe to yourself, Emma, what are your thoughts on?
Yeah, so I suppose back to your first question, anybody thinking about doing it, absolutely go do it. No time's going to be the right time. I think that even within our own class, we've seen people have children, people get married, you name it. Life is going to come and go. It should complement it. So I absolutely wouldn't sit on the fence. I would just go do it. In terms of development, look, I suppose myself, I would have felt very much being a leader was about coaching people, mentoring them, motivating them. To probably echo what Geraldine has said, it's now much more holistic. It's actually create the environment for that team to allow them to, I suppose, empower and enable them, and also to be able to sustain them. So I probably look at it very differently to how I did previously. And also, I suppose, with leadership and the development coming out of it, you know, you've got that horizontal leadership, but it's definitely the vertical. Like, it is that business acumen to be able to sit there and say, this is what I need. And being able to go into the discussions and lead with what you need because you've been able to articulate it. They definitely have been the standout development moments.
Yeah, super. And just to say to our attendees today, if you have questions there, please put them into the chat function. If we have time at the end, we might even invite people to go on their camera and actually come in. No problem doing that. There's a question in from Lisa Chambers to everyone on how old is our MBA here. It's coming up on 50 years, isn't it, Martin, next year? 50 years, yeah. And there's a question here for Emma from Lisa Lynch. Where do you want your career to move on to after finishing? This person has a very similar background to Emma, both education and work experience. So what's your own sort of maybe next? Yeah. I know you've just changed roles, so it's
yeah. So look, we you know, I suppose the good news is people do ask the question of, is the MBA worth doing it from a career perspective? I would say I'm probably on my third role within the same organisation since I've started. So absolutely it is, and it's worth that development. I suppose, Lisa, to answer your question, I probably felt I was clear when I started the MBA as to where I wanted to go and how it was going to get me there. And if I'm very honest, when I finished the MBA, I felt I was at a huge crossroads. I didn't know, did I want to go to business consulting? Did I want to stay in corporate? I didn't really know. But what I did know was that it was just the same as any other situation. Just sit down, use the tools and actually understand. So for myself, you know, I do like being in the corporate world. I know myself so much more from doing the MBA. So for example, never say never, but a CEO role isn't one that appeals to me because everything I've just spoken about has been about that team dynamic, having that availability to a team. I suppose long term, you know, for anybody from work, I'm not talking today or tomorrow, but in a couple of years' time, maybe a CEO role. So for me, the next progressive step would be Director of Operations and then potentially into a VP and onto a CEO. And I think when you're clear as to, well, what does the 2 steps ahead look like? So in my example of VP, then it's actually stepping back and looking, well, what experiences do I need? So it's not about kind of titles, it's not about doing certain roles, it's just about those experiences. So thanks very much, Lisa. I hope that answers your question.
Super. And there's a question here for you, Orna, from Emer Macman. Can I ask regarding the balance of time clinically and lectures, etc.? She is working as an SR in psychiatry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been very fortunate in that both my consultant and non-consultant colleagues have been very supportive throughout this, which has definitely been very important throughout. The lecture aspect is about 5 to 6 blocks per semester of 2 to 3 days each. So certainly need the availability of study leave to take that time. And often it can be useful to have some study leave in the bank to take when you have assignments approaching and exams looming. So definitely the support from your colleagues, absolutely essential, and having the availability to take the leave to participate in the lecture box, because participation in real time is absolutely crucial in order to get that full benefit of peer-based teaching and learning.
Yeah, very good. And maybe Geraldine, I'll turn to you, because I think it's a very interesting question that I had started there with him, and then I'll come to you, Orna, maybe just to sort of close out that question is around the future. So we've spent a lot of time looking retrospectively at where we've come from and the MBA, how it's influenced it. And you know, as I read your bio, you're a pretty busy woman, Geraldine, and you've achieved an awful lot. So I don't know if there's an awful lot of space left to keep moving onwards and upwards. You are chair and president of the American College of Radiology, and on the board of chancellors, and the first woman to hold that post. And I know you're also a non-executive director of IDA Ireland and member of the Nui Galway Governing Authority. So, I mean, in terms of looking ahead, what are your own career ambitions, and where would you like to see yourself in the next 5, 8, 10 years?
I think as my career has gone on, I've gotten better at looking at opportunities and sort of matching them against my own personal values and goals. And I think there's a theme around inclusive leadership in healthcare. As I said in the blurb for this, women are the majority of the healthcare workforce, yet they are underrepresented in leadership. So I've got a couple of interesting projects that I'm doing, obviously this one, but also internationally, looking at how we develop women leaders. So I think I'm going to keep that dialed up as much as I can. I do still have my day job. So, you know, and that continues to grow. We're obviously, just like Orna mentioned, we're a health system and a city coming out of probably the biggest impact of the pandemic in the US. So how we do that is certainly something that is keeping me very busy at work. But yeah, that theme around inclusive leadership is something that I think I'm going to keep matching opportunities up against to make sure that they fit.
Yeah, very good. And I mean, it's the same, you know, you mentioned there are a lot of women in healthcare, a lot of workers in healthcare are women, and yet we see, you know, most of the leadership actually is male dominated. So something goes wrong there. And I guess it's the same in the education sector. If you look, for example, at our primary school system here, it's very similar trend as well. So Geraldine, what do you think, you know, if you had carte blanche, what do you think organizations should be doing? So any of us on the call here, or those of us who might be in management and leadership positions where we might have some influence, limited though it may be, what do you think we should be doing to progress the agenda more and faster maybe than it has been to date around that inclusive leadership?
Sure. Well, first of all, let me say that I look at diversity along a number of axes. I mean, obviously it's gender, it's ethnicity, it's also decision-making style and perspective. Those are incredibly important. So there's a culture piece of this that says, you know, we believe this is important, we're going to strive for it. But then there's the nuts and bolts. And I just finished my very first UDRS meeting, and I really commend NUIG for what it has done around intentionally, you know, increasing the diversity of leadership, both academic and administrative. You know, and I think you referenced this, Emma. You said, "Oh, are people going to get stuck on the numbers?" The numbers matter. You know, Melody Hobson, who is probably the first woman to run a financial firm here in the US, says we put up targets on every other aspect of business and organizational performance, and we have to get comfortable putting targets on diversity. And because when we put measurements and metrics out there, then we start to adapt our processes to actually succeed in those measures. So the numbers matter.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think in fairness, Nui Galway has made an awful lot of progress over the last number of years and under the leadership of, but a newly appointed VP role and office to lead that EDI piece. And as you say, when it's given the resources and the attention, significant progress can be made. So I think I totally agree with you, making sure that stays very much front and center of a balanced scorecard approach of all the kind of things we do. Or you were coming in there to lend support to what Geraldine was saying. And I suppose you were at an earlier stage, and what's very nice is you're being very much positively influenced, and hopefully your career will be shaped in some way by Geraldine and the scholarship and the mentoring and networks that are being put in place there. So sort of looking with a lot of your career ahead of you at the stage you're at, what do you see as opportunities where you can maybe bring the agenda along, or things that you would like to work on if you're given the chance?
Yeah, like I have absolutely no doubt that Geraldine, the Board of Advisors, the scholarship itself, and the MBA program will shape my career hugely. Like certainly I've started to think a lot more about diversity and about how we can ensure that we ensure diversity. Because I think, absolutely, you look at this issue of healthcare and it is a field predominated by females, but you look at leadership positions and it is not exclusively, but a huge proportion of men in those positions. And it's not because females are less able for the positions, it's because the system doesn't actually promote them getting to these positions and getting into these roles. So certainly I don't have the answer, but I think you certainly look at how you can change the system to promote women getting into these positions and being at decision-making tables.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't know, Emma, is there anything you want to add or anything you've observed?
Yeah, like I would say within the kind of corporate, within the corporate space, it is absolutely about, I think Geraldine, you mentioned it at the start, where, females do look at ads and they go, I don't know, do I have everything? So I do find it is about encouraging people, do you have enough to go for it? Can you learn that aspect if you were to get the job? I think women in networking, I know within TE, we have our kind of women in networking group, we have our young professionals, and there are different kind of ERGs to really encourage forward. I would say as well, there is definitely that kind of consciousness in terms of where we don't focus on numbers with respect to, X amount of people in positions. I would say that there is in terms of looking at CVs. If I was to look at CVs for jobs, I would try as much as possible to say, okay, I need to see a bit more of a balanced view on it. And to echo what Odharna said, I think when you come through, not just the MBA, but in general, it is that awareness that's created and you naturally take it and then you naturally role model it.
Okay, thanks for that, Emma. There's a question in here, Geraldine, for you from Sarah Brennan. So I'll just read it out if that's okay. Considering the need for board members and public bodies entrusted with ensuring health, HCPs, medicines, developing business leadership skills is essential, i.e. for Safe Food Ireland. Geraldine, do you think a business aspect should be included in undergrad medicine / HCP?
I didn't pay Sarah to put that question there. Look, there's a lot to learn in medical school and in all of the other allied health professional trainings. But if we look at what we've learned during the pandemic, it is that how we finance healthcare, the structural way in which we deliver healthcare is hugely important in how healthy our populations are. So I think a basic understanding of where the money flows, who gets paid to do what, who's incentivized to do what, and when you think that something should change, who are the people who are going to disagree with you and why? Those are things that I think we could usefully introduce, but believe me, I'm not a curriculum expert and I know there's a lot to pack in there anyway. I teach our medical students at Cornell and it is just at that high level. What are the incentives? How does the money flow? What do you need to know so that you can deliver the best care to your patients?
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Geraldine. So if anyone would like to come in to ask a question in person, maybe you would put up your hand and our moderators would have a look. And we're happy to bring you in. It's not just about the four faces that are on the screen right now. We'll be delighted if anyone wants to come in. or if anyone knows any of the panelists and wants to say hello in particular. Otherwise, you know, we can take more questions on the chat. There are some questions around the technicalities of the MBA program, and I'll do a couple of slides at the very end just on the structure to answer some of those. And I see some of my colleagues are actually answering them as well there. So I might just ask, you know, a sort of a general question to each of you as well. It's kind of a more reflective and philosophical question, maybe. If you were to look back at your, you know, at your younger self, you know, we have some people on the call today, on our meeting today, that are at an earlier stage in their career. What's the top piece of advice that you would give your 22-year-old self if you had your time back and could give yourself a piece of advice looking back at where you've come from and where you're going? Might start, Geraldine, with yourself there.
I was going to ask if you could start with Orna, because I'm going to have to work back into my memory to even remember that far back. I think it probably would have been to do what I'm doing now. Think a little bit more about what my values are and what it is that I want to, where I want to have impact in my career. You know, at 22, I was head down, just, you know, getting through exams and being a student. There were other people in my class. I mean, Mike Ryan was in my class, and I have a sense that he at that point had, you know, just really knew that he wanted to have a global impact. That's not who I was. So I would have taken a little bit more time for reflection, but yeah.
Yeah, so take more time to think. I think we could all still take that advice, Geraldine, to be honest, because you get into such a rhythm and routine, you don't sit back and think about these things. Often we're caught up in the operational day to day. Maybe over to yourself, Emma. So if you were to look back and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, I did think about this. I think for me, it's don't be afraid to fail, you know. I think we come out of the Leaving Cert, we go straight into university. I know myself, I didn't get what I had planned on doing. I missed it by 5 points, and I really got thrown off kilter. And then I went into industrial chemistry. I went out and I did my placement, and I realized I really disliked it. It wasn't for me. But if I look back on my career, the biggest learnings have been what I do like and what I don't like. And I've learned it because I've gone into it very early. And that has definitely helped. Like myself, I'm definitely operations built. I love the pace of operations. It's fast moving. I have a lot of respect and appreciate my research and development friends, but definitely the pace is too slow for me. I would say as well, if there was something that I learned that I felt was a bit late in learning it, it's actually what Geraldine said, it's values. And I'll be honest, I didn't learn that until the MBA. You know, I saw people in public sector and private sector, people working in non-profit organizations, and I really didn't understand the relationship with values. I do now. So even when I answered, I think it was Lisa's questions earlier, I can absolutely see where I want to go because it's in line with my own values. So that would be it. But I would say, don't be afraid to try it. You know, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Thanks, Emma. The values piece is coming out from what you're saying, what Geraldine is saying there very strongly, and thinking about what we enjoy doing, I suppose, and what's inherently of value to us and authentic then in terms of what we can do. And Orna, over to you on that last question in terms of, and of course it mightn't be so long ago for yourself.
Yeah, very similar to Geraldine. At 22, I was a fourth year medical student and couldn't think beyond the next exam or the next assignment that was due or the next placement that was coming up. So I think absolutely what Emma was saying really resonated with me. Don't fear just trying things. You may not be particularly good at it, but if you're interested, if you want to try it, just give it a go. And if opportunities come your way, I try to take them unless there's a very good reason not to. And that is really how I find myself doing the MBA. So it's serving me well thus far.
Okay, super. Well, thanks for that. So we're kind of coming to the end of this part, and I have just a couple of slides on the scholarships we've mentioned, and just to close out on the MBA piece for those who might be interested. But before I finish up, is there anything you would, Geraldine or Orna or Emma, like to add that maybe hasn't been captured that came into your mind as we're discussing MBAs in general, but also women in leadership, and especially within the healthcare sector. Geraldine, I think you've unmuted there.
Very briefly. I think sort of you deserve it. You deserve to give yourself this opportunity for professional development. We're entirely too likely to not give ourselves these opportunities. So I would say that.
Okay, thanks, Geraldine. And Emma or Orna?
Absolutely, I would say the same thing. I would say, you know, like, go do it. I wouldn't overthink it. I would say there's fantastic opportunities to come out of it. And something similar to what I said earlier, somebody's got to role model it. So why can't that be you? And I think a question actually came in there at the side, which I laughed at a little bit, which I shouldn't have, but it was about what age. I laughed at it because somebody must think I'm very young, and Geraldine's very young by the listing on it. So it's back to the first comment. I think Geraldine, Orna, and yourself, Alma, would agree, like, that no time is the right time to do an MBA. It is a commitment. Absolutely, I would say that age doesn't really come into it. I would say it's probably based on where you want to go, what experience you're bringing. You will learn a lot from the people around you within it. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Emma. And I might leave the last word to you, Orna.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that. And what I would say as well is this space of female and women in leadership and female empowerment, it's such a powerful space when women support other women. And that has been something that has been so apparent throughout the scholarship, throughout the MBA course itself. And it has been, honestly, I know I keep saying it, but it is truly a huge privilege.
And thank you, Orna. And I agree. And you know, reflecting back, and I really enjoyed my time as program director for the MBA for the 6 years, and it was just fantastic to see that support network and see women growing in their confidence. And they are certainly as good as the male leaders that are out there. And when we know that, so we want to ensure that there's nothing holding back women from you know, progressing and making as good a contribution as our male counterparts do in organizations. And it's not us versus them, it's us with each other. Just maybe to before we finish up, I just want to share a couple of slides because there are some questions coming in there around the our MBA and questions on the scholarship side as well. So the Nui Galway MBA program, some of the key features that we have, obviously it's a business strategy and leadership curriculum, looking at all the different areas of business, and that has been mentioned at the start. We have MBA masterclasses where we bring in leading speakers across different industries, and that goes on across the 2-year program with very extensive industry collaborations. A key piece there in the top right in the blue circle is around the career supports and mentoring. There's one-to-one coaching, there is mentoring as well as career coaching that goes on. There's peer-to-peer coaching that goes on with the final applied strategic leadership project. So we have really built that in as a very strong component, and you can hear our speakers saying that's so important and valuable to females in terms, and males indeed, all students. We're really focused on trying to develop and broaden out networks. We have introduced an international leadership gateway. We used to go to 4 times. So Geraldine, just off of Central Park there, a bit north of where you're now at the moment in New York, we have a good relationship with Fordham down through the years. We weren't able to do that because of the pandemic, but we intend to make sure we really continue that strong international leadership gateway that we have. And very much the leadership transformation down the bottom left-hand corner there is central, and it is a theme that goes right through and threads through the 2-year program with a leadership development program and module, and we work on individual psychometric profiling and so on and so forth. So there are some of the key features in addition to what you would expect to get in terms of the business leadership and management curriculum. The structure for our program next year is very much over 2 years part-time. 2-day blocks, Thursday and Friday. You come in for 5 blocks each semester, and there's 1 3-day block in semester 2. And there's we're leveraging the experience we had with online and introducing an online component on Thursday evenings to give a bit more flexibility. And then there are residential leadership workshops and some block events that are on over the 2 years. You get plenty of notice on those. for any special or specific details that you might have, you email the MBA team, mba@nuigalway.ie. We've also mentioned a number of scholarships. So the McGinty scholarship is there, and Geraldine has kindly, funded that. We have the 30% club for female leaders, and then there are other scholarships open to both men and women. The Galway University Foundation MBA scholarship, the MedTech MBA scholarship, the Social Impact MBA scholarship, ICT scholarship, and we provide J. Cairnes School of Business and Economics scholarship. So there's still time to apply for those scholarships up until the 16th of July. And if you go online to nuigalway.ie/MBA, there's lots of information there on how to apply and more information that you can get. So that's just to kind of answer some of the questions that have come up in the chat. Is there any other questions or anything? I haven't been looking at the chat there now. I see that Orna has kindly shared her email address there. So Adrian, do I need to draw attention to anything else before I officially thank the speakers and close up? Or Aisling?
No, I think you've covered everything, Alma. Fantastic speakers and fantastic contribution, and all the questions that have come in have been answered in the chat, but we'll also follow up with the communication to everyone that registered for the event with a link to the recording as well, and detailed responses.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Aisling. So it's bang on 2 o'clock, and I'm very conscious that we don't keep people beyond the time. So I want to really thank Geraldine. I have not met you before, Geraldine. It's been an absolute privilege. I delighted to read your profile and have you on today, and please God, I'll meet you perhaps in Manhattan for a coffee at some point in time over there.
I want to be in Galway, so
yeah, that's the only problem, is where one meets now. Yeah, so thank you so much, and I know it's early for you, Geraldine, or perhaps not indeed, and Orna and Emma, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it greatly. So on behalf of Martin, who's our MBA program director, Aisling, our marketing manager, Adrian, who organised the event today, along with Mairead McKeown, and I hope I haven't left out any of my colleagues. I want to thank everybody. It has been a super event with great interest. At one point, we nearly had 100 on the event, and lots more who are going to tune into the recording. So Geraldine, Orna, Emma, thank you so much.
Continue.
Thank you. You're very inspirational, and I really enjoyed hearing from you, and onwards and upwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you.